Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, hello. Hello, so that's the sheet for today's class. Please download that for today's class. And we'll start with the first question. That's the link again for today's class. For the ones who just joined, that's the link for today's class. That's the link again. That's the link for today's class. We're starting with the first question. Please try and see if you can read the passage. Okay, I think we'll give it another 2 minutes. Three minutes. We start at 5:40. Okay, for the new joinees, here's a link again. You may not be able to do the first question, but we'll start with the second. Okay, so that's the link for today's class. I'm sending it now. Are we all in? Yes, we're all in. Okay, so that's the link for today's class. Okay, I think we'll start with the first question now. Okay, so question one, according to this passage, why is it more important now than it ever was to observe the Black History Month? What's the answer?
Is it all of the above, sir?
I think that is tempting, but are we able to infer A? Are we sure that there's more violence being moved out now?
So can it be B?
B.
B.
Yeah, I think B is possible, but because A is complicated, I don't think that A is being talked about. Okay, here's the link for today's class. Please access that and download the file. Okay, so yeah, I think B is possible, but A, I'm not very sure because they don't talk explicitly about more violence meted out against black people. And curriculums don't include black history, but that again is not really the chief concern, right? That is being talked about. This person says that I wasn't interested in history or being taught. It was taught wrongly, maybe. You can't say not included. And so the chief concern here is that the people who are in power, they feel that black people are inferior because they have no history. So I think B is very suitable. But D is very tempting. Very good. Okay. Let's move on to question number 2. Which of the following induced the author to take an interest in Black history?
B, sir.
B.
Yes,
Oh,
is it B again?
yeah, I think it is B again because I think the author met Linda Bellows at an earlier age, right? They were both quite old. I think this person was a Labour politician, and so this not somewhere. So this they were both quite old. A is wrong. B is right because they talk about that here. They talk about that here, right? In this part of the passage, they talk about that. They say that it was only when I started listening to reggae music that I began hearing about my own history, right? And then they talk about all that. Okay, very good. So why do you think the writer says, I'm not going to mention Bob Marley? He did his bit. Why?
C, sir.
C. Okay, very good. Let's see. A, probably because Bob Marley is being hyped out of proportion. I think that's too strong. Not very sure about that. Let's look at B. B says probably because Bob Marley has overshadowed several much more talented, again, much more talented, I'm not very sure, like these people, I'm not sure. And C, I think it says it's probably because singers like Pablo and all that, uh, who have greatly inspired this author, right, are not as popular as they ought to be. Yeah, I think that's very, very appropriate. Yeah, I think that's very appropriate. Very good. I think we can settle down with C. And let's go for 4. From this passage, what can you infer most definitely about racism being systemic and a system of power? They talk about that here, right? They say that that's why people nowadays often talk about racism being systemic and a system of power.
So is it B, sir?
B.
That's what I think. Not
Okay,
sure.
fine. You said B. Okay, right. So let's see. Uh, it, okay, it is very possibly a relatively recent development in race theory. It can be inferred, but it can't sort of be. They say that nowadays, no? They say nowadays here, right? So they say that's why people nowadays often talk about racism being systemic. But from nowadays, you could kind of infer that it's a recent development, but it could also have been an old development that's been given a new nomenclature. We don't really know, but we can't rule out A. Let's look at B. People who are in positions of power and responsibility were probably openly racist, sometimes even brutally so in their childhoods, and now distribute the same brutality from the safety of their desks. I think that has been talked about here. They talk about the racists are used to fight from the streets of London and all that haven't disappeared. They have now responsible jobs. They've had suits and are much more well organized, and they have organizations so they can distribute brutality from their office desks. So that's why people now talk about. I think B can be more directly inferred. Between A and B, I think B is more appropriate. And look at C, that most people are still racially prejudiced but are able to conceal or sugarcoat their prejudices and fit into the mainstream. Again, that is true, but I don't think that that is as so between B and D. I think I'd probably go for B because that's more nearer to systemic. Whereas both A and C cannot be ruled out. Uh, but A is kind of very roundabout, and therefore you could rule out D and you can settle down with B. I think B is what they're probably looking for. Okay. So let's look at question 5. So consider the line, we are of the same generation. So I can understand that when she used the term black, it was political and not a reference to skin color, something that many people find difficult to understand these days. So why do you think the author mentions the fact that they and Linda Bellows were of the same generation? So they talk about that here, right? Yeah. So sure. So it was Bellows who pioneered the first black So why is the why they talk about the generation part, and why do they say that because they belong to the same generation, they are able to uh, kind of see black as a political term and not merely a reference to skin color? Why? Let's see. Any answer?
Is it B, sir?
Okay, B, right? Let's see. Uh, it is probably just an observation quite irrelevant to the point the author is trying to make, that the term black is political and not just a reference to skin color. Okay, we don't know. Let's have it in the pipeline. Let's move on to B, because they probably belong to a generation where it had become apparent that being of an African ancestry was an especial disadvantage politically. I think that's very, very strong. It's very appropriate. Okay, let's move on. See, because they belong to a generation that made history by initiating the Black History Month. Again, that's very close, but it's not as appropriate as B. I think B is the right answer. Very good. Okay. I think that's your average CLAT level difficulty, and I think
Could
the
you repeat the fourth answer?
yeah, question 4 is it?
Yes, sir.
This one, sure. Okay, so from this passage, we can infer most definitely about racism being systemic. I think it's B.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
It's B, sure. Please don't mention. Okay, I think that's a typical CLAT, and I think the next 3 questions are quite harder than CLAT. So don't worry if you have some difficulty. Okay, so I think you can start the next question, and we'll start at 5:30. For the ones who just joined, here's the link for today's class. Please find it. Hello. If you can't access the file, please let me know. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think
Yes,
you
sir, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. for the ones who just joined,
No, sir, I got disconnected.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. Fine. Great. Okay. Okay. So I think we'll start with the first question. So, what can you say about the nature of this passage?
It's a book review, sir.
Yeah, very good. It's a book review, right? They, I think that's you can make it out from the first paragraph. Yet from the opening paragraph, Laura Turnbridge's short, illuminating study of Beethoven, etc. So that's you can make out that it's bound to be a book review. Very good. Okay.
I didn't. So can you repeat the first answer? I didn't get it.
Yeah, sure. It's a book review. It's a book review because they talk about that here. The author says that yet from the opening paragraph, and then they keep talking about this book, right? Beethoven, A Life in Nine Pieces by Laura Turnbridge.
Yeah, got it. No, I just needed the correct option.
Yeah, so the answer is C. It's a book review. Okay, so what could the phrase to cast a loose net mean? It's not really an idiom or anything. I checked out. I think to cast your net widely means that to consider a variety of options and to look widely. But to cast a loose net is not an idiom, it's something that this writer has come up with. So just try and see if you can fit it into the context, and if it makes sense, I think that should be a good fit. So they talk about the fact that gathers in the connections. Let's see. The opening paragraph, short illuminating work of Beethoven, published to coincide, casts a loose net across the centuries. So it means collecting information from a wide source, right? So casts a loose net across the centuries and deftly gathers in the connections. So it's not just the life of one person, but it's uh, it's a net that's been cast across a very long time. So let's look at the options. To search in a not very specific way for something very specific can't be ruled out. To search considering a variety of options again can't be ruled out. So I think both A and B are okay. To search in a precipitated manner. Precipitated is in a hurry, to do it in a hurry, right? To do something it could even have been precipitate manner. So that would mean that to hurry up with something. I don't think that that's a possibility. I don't think D is possible. I think A and B are both possible, so we can go for option C. So why does the author make the statement, not that she could not have known quite how pertinent her starting point would be? So they make it here, right? They say not that she could have known quite how pertinent a starting point would be. And then they say that Beethoven, A Life in Nine Pieces, opens with a prolonged campaign begun soon after his death and lasting nearly 2 decades for a monument to the composer to be built in his birth city, Bonn. Right? So that's the opening scene, right? So it opens with a campaign organized by his admirers possibly, and they want to erect a statue of Beethoven in his birth city of Bonn. So that's the opening scene. So why does the author says not that she could have known quite how pertinent her starting point would be? Now let's look at the options and see if we're able to rule out answers. Because writers seldom can guess the upshot of their literary labor. Upshot is the result or the end product, maybe. You can't rule that out, but we must also take into consideration the fact that the opening scene has been described here, right? So A is not very convincing, but yeah, we can't rule A out. Let's move on to B. Because this being a creative work, the writer could not have conjectured. Conjecture is to guess. could not have conjectured about the possible effect the opening paragraph might have had. Okay, we can't rule B out, and between A and B, I think B is more suitable. Let's look at C. They say that it's a creative work, and therefore the writer could not have imagined how effective the opening paragraph might have been. We can't rule that out. Let's move on to C. Because though the book is spread across several centuries, the opening scene is very pertinent. Okay, which could not have been accidentally so. I think C is the most effective of all. They say that not that she could have known how quite how pertinent a starting scene would be, and so the starting scene is very pertinent, right? It's a very potent scene, and that's what she says. Because though the book is played across century, the opening scene is very pertinent, which could not have been accidentally so. So it's an accident, and I think C is okay. I think because it's able to bring out the sense of accident that this line seems to convey. So I think C is okay.
But sir,
Yeah.
so option C only considers one part of the statement, which is the pertinent part, but not the part where the author could not have known how a story would have concluded. So shouldn't we include that part as well and go with A and C?
Okay. But A does C does say that which could have been accidentally so, which could only have been accidentally so.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
So I thought that would kind of mean that the writer could not have been sure as to what the finish would be, but the opening scene alone was very pertinent. I think that's what they're trying to say here. So I think C is okay.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Let's look at 9. What can you say most decisively about the book Beethoven, A Life in 9 Pieces? Is it a biography, or is it a scholarly work? Is it a work of fiction, or nothing can be said very decisively? Let's see.
So is it A?
A. Okay. A is it's a biography of the musician. Let's see. Look, they say here, it is quite tricky, I accept. See, they say somewhere here that Turnbridge's Piffy and all that, a biography presented through is different and welcome. A biography presented through the focus of 9, okay, each casting and all that. So it is, in a sense, you could think of it as a biography, but here, more specifically, they say somewhere that, let's see, that it's not really, it's not a scholarly work, but it could still be a biography. Let's see. Okay. It's a scholarly work regarding, it's a work of fiction. Could it be fiction? How can you say it's not fiction? See, they say here that Turnbridge, an Oxford professor, here publishing her first non-academic work, writes clearly, explaining technical terms on the go and with ease. Never an easy combination. So non-academic could also be non-fiction, right?
But it's more likely scholarly.
But they say it's non-academic, so scholarly is ruled out. They say it's a non-academic work, and they say it's a biography. So it's a kind of a non-academic biography, something like, you know, it's not a scholarly work. It's a non-academic book, right? So they say here that Turnbridge, an Oxford professor, here publishing her first non-academic book. So it's a non-academic book. So that's why there's an option fiction. So some people may feel that non-academic means fiction, whereas so B is quite easily ruled out. It's not a scholarly work. So between A and C, I think A is more appropriate because it says so here. They say that it's a biography presented through the focus of 9 different. It's not fiction and it's non-academic. So it's not a scholarly work. Very good. It's not. It can't be a scholarly work. B is ruled out. So between A
So
and C, yeah,
also there's a paragraph that says it's rooted in reality rather than myth. The
yeah,
last
right.
paragraph. So
Yes,
that
very
rules
good.
out.
Right, yes, that's right. Okay. So the last question is Beethoven, there's rather too much of it about. So what is the writer referring to here? Here, right? So
Is
more,
it-
yeah, yes. I think somebody was telling me something.
Yes, sir, I guess the answer B.
B. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So they say that more interested in reality than myth, and they say that with Beethoven, there's rather too much of it about. So they are talking about myth, right? Because it's not reality, it's myth. They're talking about myth. So the myth surrounding Beethoven's life, the reality surrounding Beethoven's life, the sheer quantity of music that Beethoven has left behind, A and B. I think the answer is the myths around Beethoven's life. So what they say here is uh, this person, Laura, I think they're more interested in reality than myth. With Beethoven, there's too much of it about anyway. So they mean by this they mean that there's too much of myth about, which is why they're focusing on reality, right? Otherwise, if they weren't too much of myth about, they probably would have added to the myth. But because there's so much myth about, this person is more interested in reality. So the it here refers to myth. So the answer is the myth surrounding Beethoven's life. So the answer is option A. Okay. So now let's move on to question number 3, and we'll take about 10 minutes. It's now 5:44. We'll start at 5:55. Okay. The ninth question, the answer is option A. It's a biography. It's a biography because they say here that this person, Turnbridge, who is an Oxford professor, is publishing her first non-academic work, right? And therefore, non-academic means it's not a scholarly work. So we can rule out option B. We can rule out option B. So it could be a work of fiction or it could be a biography. And I think it's quite explicitly mentioned here. Turnbridge Piffy, A Life in 9 Pieces is different and welcome. A biography presented through the focus of 9 different compositions, each casting light and all that stuff kind of thing. So I think it is a biography. So I think we can settle down with option A.
So what's the 10th answer?
The 10th answer is, let's see, it's A, option A. Option A, option A, myth. Okay. So now let's move on to question number 3 and we'll take 10 more minutes. So 5:45, we start at 5:55.
Sir, in the 10th one,
Yeah,
yeah, so since there is lot of myths surrounding her, that's why she's focusing on reality, sir. So the it in that sentence refers to myth, right? This is what your explanation meant, right? So
no, the thing is that more interested in reality than myth because there's a lot of myth surrounding the story of Beethoven
yes, sir.
than reality. So, which is probably why this particular writer, Laura Turnbridge, is more interested in reality than myth. So, if you just read that sentence slowly, it says that more interested in reality than myth. With Beethoven, there's rather too much of it about. She is particularly sharp-eyed and refreshing on the practicalities that shape any artist's life. Okay, and all that. Okay, so this person is not interested in myth because there's so much myth surrounding Beethoven's life.
Yes, sir. Got it, sir. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you. Sure. Question 13, could you please change that word semantic there to relevant, please? I'm sorry about that. So question 13, option B, that should have been relevant, not semantic. That's all. Okay, can you hear me now, Aishwarya?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so there's one change in question 13. Option B had to be changed. Please change that word semantic where to relevant.
Sir, can you repeat the answers from the 11th one, sir?
Sure, sure. 11, we haven't done 11, I think. We haven't yet
Oh, you
done
did
11.
not. Okay, sir.
Yeah, so we haven't done, we still at 10, we just did 10.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay, I think we'll start this. It's quite tricky. It's a very short passage, it's just 500 odd words, but it's about 530 words, which is much, but it's quite tricky. Yeah, let's see. Um, okay, question 11. I think somebody has an audio problem. I think Aishwarya, you can't hear me, is it?
Sir, I can hear you, sir.
Now you can hear me. Fine. Okay, great. Okay. So 11, which of the following is the most suitable line that might finish the passage above? Okay, these are hard questions and very often you get questions like these. So let's see. Option A, it is in this specific semantic sense that the word has entered the common diction of the 21st century. Can that be a good replacement? It can't be ruled out, but see, the whole argument here is how the word relevant during the mid 20th century, it required a prepositional phrase, right? But for example, something was relevant to or for a particular question or situation or argument. Whereas towards the end of the second half of the 20th century, that changed, right? And now the word relevant meant appropriate or applicable in any situation. That's OED's definition. And then now they say was OED's definition for this. OED's Oxford English Dictionary, so that definition for this new usage. And then tautologically having social, political, etc. relevance. So whatever the answer is, it's going to have something to do with social, political relevance. The fact that relevant itself means socio-political relevance, and the word has the meaning of the word has been completely altered. It's going to have something to do with that. Whereas option A, they just talk about, okay, it is in this specific semantic sense. What specific semantic sense? Yeah, having social political relevance, that the word has entered the common diction of the 21st century. Okay, it can't be ruled out. We'll see. B, my discomfort with our current use of relevance, okay, as a term of judgment, is that it conceals its criteria, and that those criteria are not aesthetic but social and political. How about that? Because look, the writer here says that he had applied for a fellowship somewhere, not a fellowship, and then it's hard to get fellowship, and then some editor of some magazine. He see here they talk about that. I can still remember the shudder I felt in early 2017 when, after expressing my desire to review a newly translated European novel, an editor asked me to find a Trump angle to make the book relevant to his magazine's reader. There's something demeaning about approaching art from a predetermined angle, all the more so when that angle is determined by our cultural precedent. I'm sorry, our current precedent, right? So that should be at the back of our minds. So I think A just says that it is in this specific semantic sense of the word, whereas B kind of brings out this discomfort, right? The fact that our current use of relevance as a term of judgment is that it conceals its criteria, and that those criteria are not aesthetic but social and political, but not aesthetic. So I think between A and B, I think B is slightly more, it's not all that bad. Okay, in this way, the original meaning of the word relevant as mandating a prepositional phrase has been maligned. I don't think that C is right. Right? I don't think that this is a concern at all. I don't think that this could be because that's already been talked about, and now they're talking about the modern day, the new usage, right? So was it see appropriate or applicable in the uh, current context or circumstance, was the OED's definition for this new usage, and then tautologically having social, political, etc. relevance. So I don't think that C is possible, and therefore D is wrong. Between A and B, you must choose one of the answers. I think B is a slightly better option than A. So I think I'd go for B. B is the right answer. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
so in subjective questions like these, is it better to pick the answer that we think is best, or is it better to play it safe and just go with all of the above?
I think you can't go for all of the above because C is wrong.
But,
Okay, because
but
okay, fine. Yeah, I think I get your point. I'm
no, sir, I'm
not.
just asking whether we should avoid answers like all of the above or none of the above.
Yeah, but I think it is a risk to go for all of the above unless you're very
Okay.
sure of it.
Okay, yes.
I think this is a slightly harder question, and you may expect one or two questions like this, not more. So I think between A and B, I think they're very close, and I think B is slightly more relevant because of the tone of this passage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I think C is kind of not going to be right. So
That could also be partially right. I mean, you could justify it in some way as a
definitely, yeah,
concluding statement or something.
definitely, yeah. I suppose you could have, you could, but yeah, I suppose you could. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I think it is quite hard. But I
Okay.
suppose in your exam you could get a question like that.
Yes, sir.
You could
So we
never
just
say.
pick the option that we think is best.
I suppose, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And
Okay.
We should,
like,
so we should negate all those partially truth answers, right?
I suppose you could do that. Yeah, you could do that. You could say that. See, just see the tone of the passage and see which is going to be more appropriate. It is quite hard, but I think it is possible that you may get one or two questions like that, and it's better to. And if comprehension is your forte, then I think it's better you kind of work on that. So I think, see, B is more relevant because of the tone of the passage. See, this person talks about how he had approached an editor, and then and this person wanted the book to be more relevant. So there is, and this person talks about art, about how you can't have blatant questions like, see, if I had a question like that on my mind as I tried to make art, I would never write another word. So there is a stress about art, and just think of it as a paragraph, a passage that has complete meaning. So if you add be there, just change that paragraph and add be there. I think that if you were to think of this as a paragraph, you would have complete meaning. Just add be there and read it, and then tautologically means redundantly, right? Having social, political, etc. relevance. My discomfort with our current use of relevance as a term of judgment is that it conceals its criteria, and that those criteria are not aesthetic but social and political. If you think of it like that, then I think if you just get this off and then have something like this, you know, you put that there and see what happens, right? So they say that, yeah, they say that, and then tautologically having, okay, relevance in this way, the original meaning of the word relevant as mandating a prepositional phrase has been maligned. It's not all that suitable, right? Because the whole phrase has been talked about here and it's forgotten now.
Understood, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose if you can try doing that, you could kind of say that B is more appropriate than C, and A, it is hard. And it is in this, again, if you do that, just put that there, and it is in the specific semantic sense. Semantic is the meaning of a word. Semantic sense that the word has entered the common diction of the 20th century. I think A and B are very close. It's very hard to rule out, but somehow I feel that B is very closely, yeah, more. I think it is quite tricky. I don't
Yes.
deny that. Yeah, great. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
sure. Thank you. The word apportioned is, in the context in which it is used, might come nearest in meaning to which of the following words. I think that's not very hard. So they say here that the common forebear is ancestor or parent or ancestor. So the common forebear of both relevant and relief is the French relever, which meant originally to put back into an upright position, to raise again. Okay, a word that twisted through time, scattering meanings that are modern, uh, that are two modern words have apportioned between them. So these are all the scattered meanings that the French word relever has, and these have apportioned, which means they have kind of sectioned or separated for themselves or divided, separated, shared, acquired, divided, all of the above. So what do you think the answer would be?
Divided, sir.
Divided is more appropriate, right? Very good. Divided is more appropriate because there's no sharing. I suppose apportion here could come nearest to meaning to divided. So if you just replace apportion with divided, I think you'd get a more suitable answer. Very good. Okay. Let's look at 13. What is the central concern of this passage? Let's go option by option. There isn't a central concern, or the central concern has not yet been arrived at and may arrive at a later stage of the essay of which this passage is a part. Okay, I think that's not very convincing. Let's go to B. The shift in the semantic association of the word relevant. That alone is not the concern. The fact that relevance is slowly becoming a purely socio-political, becoming of a purely socio-political connotation. Connotation means meaning, connotation, and strictly not of an aesthetic one, which is a very recent development. Yeah, I think that can be inferred too, because they say that this happened only towards the turn of the last century, before which it meant something quite different. Yeah, so I think B and C is not very right. I think C is the right answer. C, I think, is more appropriate than the rest. Let's go to question number 14. Why does the author open the passage with the fact that relevant and relief have common etymological roots? Okay, again, let's go option by option so that the author may later tell us that she or he had wanted to be a poet while young. I think that bogus, right? Sometimes you can see that the examiner is just coming up with options to fill the gap. I think that's one of them. See, the reason is because, but this is a tricky question. This is a very tricky question. It's not all that simple. Why do they talk about the word? Okay, why do they talk about the common etymological? So, what role is that playing in this passage? That's the question, right? What role is this playing in this passage? Why are they doing this? What does it need to do this? So the author may later tell us that, okay, I think that's bogus. The examiner is just trying to fill a gap, right? To illustrate how, though both words have the same etymological origin, the word relevant has deviated in its meaning. Again, not the central concern. The central concern is what this is doing to the arts, right? So it's not this is not a linguistic passage, but rather something to do with what's happening in the arts and culture. So B is not really a very suitable option. We can't rule B out the way we rule A out. Option C, because the word relevance has started to confuse the author so much, especially in the context of the arts, that she or he decided to look up its history. See, that's actually a very, very true. See, part of my confusion about the meaning of relevance has to do with a curious shift in usage. Until, okay, I think so this person is confused, right? So part of my confusion about the meaning of relevance has to do with a curious shift in usage. And then they talk about how relevance and relief, the word relevant and the word relief have a common etymological origin in the French word relever. And then, and all that. So part of my confusion about the meaning. And then here too, I looked up this history because I realized that somehow I'd lost my sense of what we mean when we talk about relevance, especially the relevance of art. And I wanted to know whether the problem lay in my own understanding or in some deficiency in our usage. So if you take that part of the paragraph into consideration, I think the answer is going to be option C. because the word relevance has started to confuse the author so much, especially in the context of the arts, that she or he decided to look it up in history, in the books of etymology. I think C is okay. B is not as wrong as A. A is absurd. Okay, 15. Which of the following usage of the word relevant might have been considered irrelevant before the 20th century? Mid 20th century. So they say here that it was only in the mid 20th century. Until the mid 20th century, according to the OED, the word meant pertinent to a specified thing, and it was generally accompanied by a prepositional phrase. Something was relevant to or for a particular question or situation or argument, right? So that's how it was until the mid 20th century, and then things changed. So let's look at what, okay. So the question here is, in which of the following sentences here, relevant might have been considered irrelevant, or you could say odd. Okay, just change that irrelevant to odd or odd, meaning not correct. Yeah, meaning not correct or peculiar, not irrelevant. I think that's a mistake. Peculiar might have been considered peculiar before the mid 20th century because it's not commonly used. So they say here that, so we're looking for sentences that don't really have a prepositional phrase or anything like that. So let's see. It's not relevant to ask that question. It's not relevant to ask a question like that. Can that be ruled out? No, I don't have a Tinder account. It is of no relevance for me. I don't,
Please, sir.
okay, I don't think English grammar has any relevance anymore. Stop blabbering. What you say is not at all relevant to climate change. Very good. C is the right answer. Because everything else has some kind of a prepositional phrase. See, it's not relevant to ask a question like that. So ask a question like that is a prepositional phrase, and relevant is followed by that. To is a preposition, right? And that's followed by a phrase that's the phrase here. No, I don't have a Tinder account as it is of no relevance for me. Again, for is a preposition. I don't think English grammar has any relevance anymore. So that has no preposition. So that is what the word relevant is being used. That's how the word relevant is being used now. Stop blabbering. What you say is not at all relevant to climate change. Again, to is a preposition and relevant is followed by a preposition. So very good. So I think C is the right answer. This is a very hard passage. I don't think this is slightly harder than what you could expect in your CLAT, but because next year is a second year that they have the same pattern, we don't know. We can't really guess how hard it might be. Okay, so let's go to question 4. And I think you can take it now 6:10, 6:20. I think 6:30 will start. Question 4. Okay, so I think we'll start with question 16. Consider the following statements. Which of them are true or may be inferred from the passage? Any answers for that?
Sir, is it option B?
B is 1, 3, and 5.
Yes.
So I
Okay,
thought it was D.
Yeah, sorry, D. It can't be number 5, so yeah, D.
okay. 1 and 3. The narrator is now a famous writer. The writer is suffering from a sort of schizophrenia. Okay, so we can't say anything about 2. And the narrator is now a famous writer. We know that because they won the prestigious Cocker Prize. And how about 4? Why is 4 wrong?
Well, it is correct.
Let's see. Okay, look, this person from Janagar 4th block, but we can't infer that from this passage. And also the fact that the very first line says that when I'd come back from Chicago, pale and cadaverous. Cadaverous means it looks like a cadaver, means like a dead body, right? My parents had come to the Bangalore International Airport to pick me up. And it can be inferred that this person is from Bangalore and that she's a woman and that she's quite young because her mother seems to be quite intimate with her and all that. It's quite hard, I understand, but so I think that 4 can be inferred.
But sir, that would mean we have to pick option C, and that
Yeah,
includes the 5th one. And I don't think the 5th one is right.
this one is right to see. They say here that that would form the subject for my first story, published by the editors in their wisdom, despite all that sort of thing, by the online magazine Off Print, and trigger my debut novel. So the person is also a short story writer. And you can also say that the debut novel is probably a collection of stories. So it can't be ruled out. We can't rule out the fact that the narrator is a short story writer because they say that here. So
How is 4,000 words a short story, sir?
yeah, I think that under 6,000 words is fine.
Okay.
I suppose even 7,000 words is fine. I think 4,000 words is quite long for a passage, but yeah, I think 4,000 words is could be okay. I think like your average word limit is 5,000 words in most competitions. So I think 4,000 words is okay. So
4,000 words. I read it as 4,000 pages. My bad. Yeah.
okay, fine, no problem. So I think 4 is okay and 5 is okay. So I think the only thing that we can't infer is 2 because we don't know whether this person went for higher studies or whatever. So I think C is okay. C is okay, fine. So let's move on to 17. So why did the author's mother pucker her lips? Pucker is to screw it up, to kind of collect it into a mask when you're worried, when you're crying or okay, and cry. And why did the author have to take her to spend a rupee? So why? I think that's here at the start of the passage. Puckered up her lips and then cried and kind of had to spend a rupee. So what could the answer be? Could it be A? Okay, let's go option by option. So she puckered her lips up and cried because the offer had become very thin. Now that can be inferred, right? That can be inferred because they say here that only then I was fat and healthy. And also they say here that so you spend all the money on food, so you become thin. So that is possible. You can't rule that out. And she had spent a rupee, very possibly because they had wanted to check the offer's weight at some nearby weighing. How about that? Can A be an answer? Okay.
Not likely, sir.
Okay. Let's see. Let's move on to B. She puckered her lips and cried because it had probably been a very long time since she'd met her daughter and had to spend a rupee because she wanted to go to the toilet. How about that?
That makes sense, sir. B
It's
makes sense.
kind of possible. To spend a rupee could be used as a kind of a euphemistic way of referring to going to a toilet, right? Euphemism is to use a less harsh word. Okay, she puckered her lips up and cried because the offer had become thin and had to spend a rupee because she wanted to go to the toilet. Between B and C, what do you think is more likely, or more appropriate, or more? Just a moment. I think I have a chat. I'm not able to access it. Okay, so we have someone saying it's either B or D. Okay, just a moment. I'll go back to that dot side. Yeah, either B or D. And okay, fine. Why not C? She puckered her lips up because the offer had become very thin. See, there is a sense of depression here, right? Something has happened. Something very serious has happened. See, they say that so you've spent all the money they gave you for food and books, so this person become very thin. And there is a problem here. There is a tension. So it's not just that they haven't met for a long time and they're meeting now. So I feel that 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 C is a very suitable answer. C is very possible. She puckered her lips and cried because it had probably been a very long time since she had met her daughter, and she had to spend a rupee because she wanted to check the offer's weight. I don't think checking the weight is very appropriate because it is the offer who's holding her mother's hand back, right? So C, I think, is okay. Okay, the previous question, let's see. Previous question is C. And this one, I think, is C too. Okay, so why does the author ask her mother if Gandhi was from Janagar 4th block? Cannot be exactly deciphered from this passage. Okay, let's go to B. Because she just wants to bring Janagar into the conversation because she needs it for the narrative. Because the author was young and she probably thought Janagar was an entire country for whose freedom Gandhi had fought.
C, sir.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And okay, this is probably something the writer just made up for the sake of building a narrative. Again, I think that B and D are just bogus, and it can be inferred. She's probably very young, right? She said that she was a girl, she was young, she didn't know anything, and she probably thought that Janaka block was a whole country. And she asked her mother why Gandhi was fighting for that whole country if he wasn't from Janaka. So why did they fight for their freedom or whatever? Okay, so I think that can be inferred too. Right. So why does the offer, what does the word heifer mean? Heifer mean, it's heifer. The I is silent, it's just heifer. So what does heifer mean? This is a GK-like question. You either know it or you don't know it. You can't infer it from the passage. Yeah, heifer means a young cow. Heifer is a young cow that's still quite young. So if you don't know it, you can't get the answer. I don't think that you can make it out from the context of the passage. Okay, so what can be said most decisively about the writer? What inference is okay. Among the following is most logically coherent with a passage. Okay. So she was probably a student in the US and had lost her health there and had come back to pursue a career in the arts. Okay. So we're looking for logical coherence. So if it's logically okay, it's okay. And among the options, we're looking for the ones which are most logically coherent. And if none of them are logically coherent, then you go for none. Because A is logically coherent, so none is wrong. So A could be an answer. A is very possibly could be an answer. Let's look at B. She's probably a software engineer who went to the US and came back and quit her job to pursue a career in the arts. Between A and B, what do you think is more suitable? Okay, keep this in mind. This statement in mind. So you spent all the money we gave you for food on books. So why would they say that? It means that these people are kind of giving us some money, right? And
She's a
also
student.
very possibly a student. So it's more logically coherent that she's a student. Let's look at B. C. She's probably a student of the arts um, who went to the US to study and had isolated herself so much that she began to develop schizophrenia. That has eventually led her to becoming a great writer. Yeah, I think that C is more complete, right? It's more comprehensive because she has won a prestigious prize. And there has been schizophrenia. I think that C is an open invitation. I think C is quite okay. Okay, any doubt so far? I think that your RC questions in your exam won't be this hard, but this is a good indication of how hard it is. This is upper limit. And I think that your module has 90 questions, so maybe you could solve 1 or 2 questions a day. If you have doubts, you can come back to me, and you can WhatsApp me, or you could WhatsApp. But maybe you could start solving 1 question or 2 questions a day from your module. And I think your module question should be reasonably simple compared to what we do in class. So the questions in class are 20 or 30% harder than the questions that you might expect in your CLAT exam. Okay, so the next questions are different. So you have 4 alternatives to summarize a text here. I think these should be easy. So take maybe 10 minutes to the next 3 questions. It's 21, 22, and 23. And then we can start discussing them. Okay. So we'll start with 21. How about 21? Any answer for that? I think this will help you because, as you can see, all the options are very close to one another. So you have to be able to pick them apart very cleverly. Any answer for that? 21?
Is it A, sir?
Hello. Oh,
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
oh, okay, fine, thank you. I think I lost connection there. Just a moment. Where's that? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. So I think 21 is A. Because the rest are, you can see that the rest are insincere. The examiner is just trying to play with you. They're just trying to fill up some gap. My connection here is not stable. I'll turn my phone on me. Okay. So yeah, we can kind of make that out that the rest are not very sincere, and A is kind of stands out as the right answer. Okay. How about 22? Okay, any doubts with 21 before we go to 22? Are you all okay with 21?
So we can't see your screen, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir, even I can't see it.
Just give me a moment. I think there's. How about now? No, not yet.
No, sir, no.
Okay. Okay. Just give me a moment. I may lose connection, but we'll come back. Okay. So what you can do is just keep trying. Just give me a minute. Okay. I think the something wrong with the connection. I think. How about now?
No, sir. Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Are we okay with 21? All of us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 21 is quite simple. As you can see, A is the only sincere option. You can see that they're trying to actually make a point. The others are just deliberately bogus, right? So sometimes you should be able to assess the examiner's psychology most of the time. So you know that one option is sincere. So this passage is summarized by this option. The rest are just bogus. Now let's go to 22. How about 22?
I marked D, sir.
I marked D2.
Then I mark D.
Okay. Why D? Could they talk about physically? Okay, inertia is a feeling that you can't
It
move.
just seems
Okay.
more to the point.
Okay. Could they talk about physical inertia and mental inertia as two separate topics? So it can be D or C. How about C? I think C is kind of too literal, right? It says that physical inertia restricts bodily movements inactive in front of you. B, mental inertia freezes your energy and stops your mind from responding meaningfully. Okay, fine. How about, are you all okay with that? With question number 22? No doubts? I think it's quite simple, right? As you can see here, they just talk about inertia. They don't talk about physical inertia and mental inertia as two separate topics. And here they talk about when you have inertia, you don't act, although you see one person exploiting another. It's just not very good. Between C and D, I think D is more suitable. How about 23? Any answer for that?
B,
Okay,
sir.
let's B for. Okay, any other answer? Or anybody else? Okay, we have A too. Okay, so let's see. Let's solve it. So they say here that it's it's about buying before experiencing it, and then they talk about the sedan, and then they say maybe you will discover that it's difficult to park the van in your small parking, but that on the other hand, your elderly father has much easier time getting in and out of it. So by experiencing the consequences firsthand, that's the whole thing. They become more meaningful. In addition, you are likely to experience consequences you are not even thought of before. And then they talk about how to try before buy and all that. That's it. So A says that if you are planning to buy a van after being used to sedans, borrow a van or rent it and try it before deciding to buy it. It's too specific, right? Whereas your sedan is only an example. Then you may realize that parking a van is difficult while it is easier to. Uh, okay, that's just kind of a bit roundabout. Let's look at B. Before choosing an alternative, experience its consequence if feasible. For example, you want to choose change from sedan to a van. Try one before buying it. You will discover aspects you may never have thought of. I think that's very appropriate, right? Let's look at C. Between A and B, I think B is more favorite. Let's go to C. Always try before you buy anything. You are bound to discover many consequences. One of the consequences of going in for a van is that it is more difficult to park than sedans. This is more, again, more specific. So the example of a van being larger than a sedan is only an example to kind of illustrate the idea of try before buy. Between B and C, I think B is more suitable. Let's go to D. We urge you to try products such as vans before you, okay, then you can experience consequences. Okay, I think A and D are, from the tone, we can make out that A and D are absurd. B and C are very close. And I think that between B and C, let's look at B. Before choosing an alternative, experience its consequences if feasible. If, for example, you want to change from a sedan to a van, try one before buying it. You will discover aspects you may never have thought of. Aspects here could include difficulties. Okay, so always try before buying anything. You are bound to discover many consequences. One of the consequences of going in, it's a very direct jump from that. I think between B and C, B is more appropriate. So I think that they could ask you these questions for your Christ and all that. I think this is an LSAT question. So these were taken from some past year LSAT papers. And they could ask you questions like this in the other examinations, like the one for AILT and Christ and all that. Okay. So any doubts in this session? It was like I said, it's considerably harder than a typical CLAT paper. So don't get worried if you found it hard. So it's the upper limit. So if you can do this, then you shouldn't have any difficulty with your CLAT paper. Okay, so I think we'll end this session now and we'll
I have a doubt.
see you in the next class. Yeah, please.
So for the 22nd question, I marked it as A, but I understood why the other answer is right.
Okay.
Please tell me why A is wrong though.
Just give me a moment. Let me just go back to the 22nd question of, yeah, just a moment. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. Right. So let's. Right. Okay. So you scroll down 22nd. Yeah. See, A says inertia makes your body and mind sluggish. They become insensitive to tragedies, exploitation, and persecution because it freezes your energy and decapacitates it. I think this talks essentially mostly about the mental inertia, right? It talks next to nothing about physical inertia, where they say physical inertia, and also it doesn't talk about the two kinds of inertia. I think here they say physically inertia is a feeling that you can't move. Mentally, it is a sluggish mind. So there's physically and then there's mentally, the two kinds of which this point doesn't bring out. It just says that inertia makes your body and mind sluggish. Yeah, I think it's not completely wrong, but it's I suppose between A and D kind of seems to be more. I think I had marked A2 when I tried to solve it first because it seems to be more comprehensive. I had marked A2, but then the key said D. So I thought that because they want you to think of physical inertia and mental inertia as two separate concepts, maybe. That's what I guessed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, don't mention. Okay. Okay, so good
Uh,
luck
I-
and yeah,
So I had a general question.
yeah.
In RC passages, is it better to go through the questions first and then revert to the passage, or is it better to just start by reading the passage?
I think what they say is that it's better to spend about 5 or 10 seconds to go through the questions before you start the passage, but don't spend too much time with the questions too. So that, because I guess the advantage there is that you know where to look. So
Right.
sometimes they don't mark words, and so uh, if you don't know where to look, then you may have to read the whole thing again because there
Right.
you're understand. So I think it's better you spend 10 seconds or 12 seconds, not more than that, to quickly go through questions. So, for example, questions like what is the central motto of this passage? There's no point going through it, right? Going through the options. But
Exactly.
if they ask you for a word meaning or they ask you for the meaning of a particular phrase, then I think if you know what phrase they want, then while you read that phrase, you could kind of pay more attention to it, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I think that way you could save time. That's what I
Yes.
feel.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir.
Sure. Bye. Bye. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye.
Sir, could you tell what the 23rd answer was?
23rd is it? Hold on. 23rd answer would be B.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Bye. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thanks. Bye.